This video is the first look at finding present values and future values of multiple cash flows. So again, I'll work through some examples. We'll talk a little bit about the math that's involved, and I'll have some practice problems for you to do. So let's just get started. In this case, we're not having just a single lump sum cash flow where we just deposit some money at the beginning and then wait and see what it ends up with. Now we're making a deposit every year. So in this example, we're going to save $100 per year for 3 years in a row. So every year, we're going to put $100 in the bank, and then after 3 years, we're going to see how much we have. All right? We're going to earn 8% per year on our savings. All right? And then we're going to make an assumption here, and this may seem unusual, but it's just the way we have gotten to where we do things in the academic study of finance. Right? We always assume the first deposit happens 1 year from now. Right, so when we talk about these kind of problems and we say, okay, you're going to pay $100 a year for so many years, we always assume the first payment, the first deposit is made exactly 1 year from now. Right? One reason why we do that is because this is the same mathematics that's used to figure out loans. And in most loans, when you borrow money, the first payment you have to make is the following period. You don't have to make a payment the day you take out a loan. It's a month from now if the loan is paid monthly, or a year from now if the loan is paid yearly. Okay, so when we talk about these problems, we just always make the assumption that the first deposit happens 1 year from now, or the first payment happens 1 year from now. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, and then the question is, how much will you have 3 years from now? So let's look at how we would solve this problem. Now, I've drawn out a timeline here, and this is another thing for if you're just beginning your study of finance, you should understand, again, the assumptions that we make in academic finance, how we work these things out. So I've got a timeline drawn out here. Notice that right now is time 0. That's just how we've defined it. Right now is time 0. Time 1 is exactly 1 year from now. Time 2 is exactly 2 years from now. Right? And we want to know the future value 3 years from now. And so what we're saying is that, well, a year from now, you'll make the first deposit, put $100 in. You'll leave that in the bank. It will earn 8%. And then at the end of 2 years, you'll come add another $100 to the bank. You didn't take anything out. You just added another $100 to what you had. Right? And then that amount of money will sit in the bank and earn 8% over the 3rd year. Right, and then our assumption is we want to know how much we're going to have 3 years from now. And again, in finance, we just make the problem this. We just always do the problem this way. We assume that what you're going to do in the 3rd year is you're going to go down and put that $100 in the bank, and then immediately ask what your balance is. Right, so you add that $100 to whatever you have, and then say, okay, how much do I have? Okay. All right, so we can figure out how much this is going to be. One way to do it is just use the lump sum formulas that we had before and figure out the future value of each one of these. So what I can say is, well, I'm going to put this $100 in the bank, and it's going to stay in the bank for 2 years. Right? Notice it's going to be in the bank from here to here and earn 8% interest, and then I'm not taking anything out. I'm just going to leave it in there, and I'm going to add another $100 to it, but that original $100 is still going to sit in the bank and earn interest from here to here. So this will be in the bank for 2 years, from here to here and here to here. The $100 I deposit 2 years from now is going to be in the bank for 1 year, right, from here to here. And it will earn 8% interest. Okay, and then remember the last $100 I'm going to put in the bank and then say, okay, how much do I have in the bank, right? So it doesn't earn any interest, it just goes in the bank and is added on there. Right? So, well, I can use my lump sum formulas. The future value of a lump sum, if I put $100 in the bank and leave it in the bank for 2 years and earn 8% interest, it's that formula right there. Okay, and then the second $100, well, it's only going to be in there for 1 year, so the exponent is 1 here, so I'm just using my future value formula. It'll be that amount there. And then the last $100, remember, I just put it in the bank, and then I say, how much do I have? It doesn't have time to earn any interest, so it's just adding $100. Right, so if I figure out what these values are and I add them all up, I'll end up with $324.64. Right, so If I deposit $100 a year for 3 years and earn 8% interest on my deposits, at the end of year 3, I will have $324.64. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Here's a problem to practice. I encourage you to pause the video and try this. Exact same problem, I just changed the numbers. You're going to save $500 per year for 3 years. You can earn 6% per year. Again, remember the assumption always is we're going to make the first deposit exactly 1 year from now. How much will you have 3 years from now? So I encourage you to give that a try. And here's the answer. All right, the answer is $1,591.80. I solved it this way. Again, the first $500 that I deposit a year from now is in the bank for 2 years, so I can find its future value that way. The next $500 is in the bank for 1 year. There's its future value. The exponent is 1 here. And then the last $500, I just put it in the bank and say, hey, how much do I have? So it doesn't earn any interest. And if you add those numbers up, you'll get $1,591.80. Okay. Now, I solved that using the lump sum formulas, and that's fine. And I encourage you to do it that way because you need practice with those lump sum formulas. I know that when I was a student, I found it easier, and even now when I run into these problems, it's often easier to solve the problem a different way. So I'm just giving you an alternative way to solve this. You can pick whichever way you like. I think about it as, well, I'm just going to figure out how much money I have at the end of each year. So for instance, I know at the end of year 1, I'm going to have $500 because at the end of 1 year from now, I'm going to go down to the bank and deposit $500. All right, and so I'll have $500 a year from now. Now, year 2, I'm going to go down to the bank and I'm going to put $500 in, but the $500 I put in last year will have earned interest. So if it's earning 6% interest, it will have earned $30 in interest. So I'll have $530 in the bank at the end of year 2, and then I deposit $500 on top of that, and that adds up to $1,030. So at the end of year 2, I'll have $1,030. And I'm just going to leave that in the bank. So that is going to earn 6% interest over the year, and then I'm going to add $500 to it. So I can say, okay, well, that $1,030 will earn 6% interest, and it will end up being $1,091.80 at the end of year 3. And then I'll add $500 to it, and so at the end of 3 years, I'll end up with $1,591.80. Notice that's the same answer I got using the lump sum formulas. So you can do it either way. I encourage you to do it both ways, right? Because one gives you practice using the lump sum formulas, which is good to have practice with. And this to me is a more intuitive way of understanding exactly what's going on with the interest and how you're earning that interest at the bank and what's going on here. Okay, so there's 2 ways to solve that problem. I encourage you to do it both ways. Practice it both ways. Okay, here's one for you to practice. So $400 per year for 4 years, you can earn 8%. Remember, the assumption is that you'll make that first deposit exactly 1 year from now. All right, so I encourage you to pause the video, take a moment, see if you can get one of my answers here. You're going to put that $400 in the bank, the first $400. Remember, it will sit in the bank for 3 years because you make the first deposit a year from now. So you can use your lump sum formulas to find that future value. It's going to be in there for 3 years, and then the next one will be in there for 2 years, and then the next one for 1 year, and then the last one you'll just add $400 at the end. Okay, another way you could do it is say, well, I know after 1 year I'll have $400. It's going to earn 8% over the first year, and so I think that would be $432 if I'm doing the math in my head. And then I'm going to add $400 to that. So at the end of 2 years, I'd have $832. And then that will go forward and earn interest 8% a year. And you can just calculate how much you'll have at the end of each year. Okay, so you can do it either way. I have solved it here using the future value formulas. I've worked all the numbers out here. I get $1,802.44. is the answer I get, and you can see the math that I did to solve it there using the lump sum formulas. And here is the alternate solution where I just looked and said, okay, how much will I have in the bank at the end of each year? All right, notice I end up with the exact same amount of money. You should end up with the exact same answer whichever way you do it. All right. Okay, so that's multiple cash flows there, figuring out the future value of multiple cash flows. Okay, we can also do this for present value. And by the way, again, your finance majors starting out here, this is something you will do over and over and over again. Even in very complicated problems where one corporation is buying another corporation, a lot of it comes down to figuring out the present value of cash flows they expect to receive in the future. Right, so it's very important that you understand this concept and you know what you're doing. All right, so I've got an example here. This is the same example, but instead of you depositing $100 a year, I've turned it around and saying that, okay, somebody's going to pay you $100 a year. One way I think about these kind of problems is somebody wants to borrow money from me today, and they say, look, I can pay you back $100 a year for the next 3 years. How much would you be willing to lend me today based on that promise? I can pay you $100 a year for the next 3 years. How much would you lend me today? All right, and you want to make an 8% return on that investment. Okay, and so the amount that you'd be willing to lend them today is the present value of those cash flows. Okay, and I've got the same timeline for the problem. Notice that we assume that the first $100 is received exactly 1 year from now. Right? And you're going to receive the cash flows this way. And the way we solve this problem is we just say, okay, well, I can take the present value of each one of these. I can treat each cash flow as a lump sum, take the present value of each one of those cash flows and add them all up. So that's what I'm going to do. Right? I receive $100 1 year from now, $100 2 years from now, and $100 3 years from now. So we find the present value of each cash flow and add them up. So the present value of the first one, 100 divided by 1 plus 8% to the first. And then the only thing that's going to change here is the exponent. Right? This next $100 is received 2 years from now, so the exponent is 2. And then the next $100 is received 3 years from now, so the exponent is 3. And so that says the present value of these cash flows is $257.71. Okay. And again, the way I think about what that means, what that tells me is that, well, if I'm going to loan somebody money today based on their promise to pay me $100 a year for the next 3 years, and I want to earn an 8% return on this loan, then the most I'd be willing to lend them today is $257.71. Okay. Another way to think about it, and I encourage you to prove this to yourself, is that if I deposit $257.71 today at time 0 and leave it in the bank for 3 years, so that like a lump sum deposit, that much money, and leave it in the bank for 3 years and earn 8% interest, I'll end up with the same amount of money as if I deposited these $100 each year for the next 3 years and earn 8%. Okay, I'll end up with the same amount of money either way. Okay, earning 8% interest. Okay, so here's another one. Here's a practice problem. So you're going to get $500 a year for 3 years. Interest rates are 6%. What's the present value of those cash flows? So again, we're going to just use our lump sum formula. We're going to find the present value of each cash flow and add them all up. And so I've got the math worked out here. The answer I get is 1,336.51. And I've shown you the value of each cash flow here. You add all of those up, that's how much you would get. Okay, and just to make it clear what this present value tells you, I say, well, suppose you deposit that amount of money today and earn 6% per year for 3 years. How much will we have in the bank 3 years from now? Well, that's a lump sum problem. I'm just going to put that in the bank and leave it in there for 3 years. and I'll end up with 1,591.8. And that is exactly the same answer as when we figured out the future value of 3 payments of $500 that earn 6% per year. It's just telling you that's what present value means. If you say, hey, listen, I'll either give you this amount of money today, or I'll pay you $500 a year for the next 3 years. Well, if interest rates were 6%, you'd say, I don't care. I'll end up with the same amount of money either way. All right, that's what the present value of those cash flows is telling you. Okay, so there's a start on doing multiple cash flow problems using the lump sum formulas that we developed in time value.